Hello, you beautiful ladies. Today we have got a gorgeous guest on today, Dr. Juliana Houser, and we are going to be talking about mental health as it relates to this phase in life and with perimenopause and menopause. So there are so many changes that happen during this time, and we both feel that we need to be talking more about the mental health aspects of this time in life it's coming for us all. And I'm in menopause, but we're going to talk about the differences in what we're experiencing in both different aspects, perimenopause and menopause, as well as what to look for, what treatments are available, how to destigmatize the shame around talking about our mental health. And you're going to leave this conversation with lots of tools, lots of information, and a really great woman on your side when it comes to our mental health. We don't want anyone to suffer. We want all of you to thrive. And we know in order for you to be able to do that, that you need to be on top of what depression looks like, what anxiety looks like, what your changing mood looks like, when to seek help, when to seek treatment, what kind of treatments are available, what type of options are available. We are going to get into all of that today. So it's Mental Health Awareness Month, like I said. So I am just so delighted to bring you Dr. Juliana because not only is she a fabulous one-on-one counselor to so many, she's also a TEDx speaker. She is an author. She's a prolific content creator, and she is so generous in what she shares to her community. So you're going to want to follow her and get into her world after you listen to this conversation. So stick around. This is probably one of the most important conversations you'll hear because you need to put yourself first, your mental health first, so then you can go out and do all those wonderful things that you want to do. And of course, live that you're not too fucking old mantra, but you're not going to feel it if you're not feeling it, if you know what I'm saying. So dig into this beautiful episode, and I can't wait to hear what you think. Enjoy. Juliana, thank you so much for being on this podcast. It's Mental Health Awareness Month, and I've been sort of stalking you and all the beautiful content you've been putting out online. I've been following you for a really long time, but thank God you popped up in my feed with our friends at Hot Pause Health because I was like, oh, I've got to have you on ASAP because women are suffering. We know with perimenopause and menopause, mental health comes into play. And we're going to get into all the details, ladies. Today, we're going to talk about the mental health aspects of perimenopause and menopause and just mental health in general. And so one of the questions I'm going to ask Dr. Juliana is about, are all our mental health woes sort of tied to menopause or not? Because maybe they are, maybe they aren't. There's a lot of stuff that happens and just kind of all coalesces and coincides and crashes into each other during midlife. So we're going to get into all the things. So everyone stick around because we've not yet talked about specifically on this podcast how menopause and perimenopause impacts our brain. So this is going to be a conversation you're going to want to listen to and share with friends. But first of all, Dr. Juliana, thanks for hopping on and wanting to do this with me and have a really great conversation today and being so generous with your wisdom and insights. I am just thrilled to have you here today.
Thank you so much. And thank you for the work that you're doing. We all have to be in this space helping each other. And I'm so grateful for you.
Thank you. I know it takes a village. And I'm just, as much as we're all talking about the things, we just haven't even scratched the surface rather on the women that need to hear it, because I will be sitting next to women in San Francisco in a yoga class who still have no information. It's like, okay, well, first of all, you need to be listening to this podcast, but it's just, I don't even take offense, but it's just it just paints this picture of that we think we all know, but we don't. And so that's why I'm so passionate. I know it's why you're so passionate about spreading the message. And the message is you're not alone. We are all women in midlife. We need resources. We need support. Life can be beautiful, but we're also dealing with the things. Somebody on Instagram today, she was saying lifes, and mental health is when life can life. And we've talked a lot about it on the show, but let's start at the top. Mm-hmm. Perimenopause, menopause impacts our brain. Mm-hmm. And in those two phases, I know enough to know, but I ain't no doctor, to know that it impacts our brain in different ways in perimenopause and menopause. So let's start there. What happens to us mentally and with our brains in perimenopause and menopause?
So my expertise stays in the lane of how the brain is changing and with our emotions related to hormones. So that'll be how I answer. But there's a lot that has to do more with how brain fog and our cognitive awareness that I'm not as much of an expert in. But what I do know, both sides of this, is that what is happening to our hormonal shifts in perimenopause and menopause is directly affecting how we are feeling in our emotions in both those times. So it's absolutely tied together. And the way that I like to talk about this is we know that during PMS, that it's a well-known symptom that there could be mood swings. Lots of jokes about it and about a woman in PMS, what that feels like. But we take it, we know this as a fact. But this could be, not everyone has it, but a lot of women do. We know this with pregnancy. We know that in pregnancy, there's going to be changes. I remember for me, like I couldn't barely watch a commercial and I'd just break into tears. I wasn't feeling sad, but I had that sentimental thing came up to me. It was uncontrollable. It was absolutely out of my control. And it was because of a hormonal shift that was happening. We know, and I'm so grateful for this, we know that there is a huge hormonal shift that is happening after a pregnancy, so in postpartum. And we know that there is a huge rise of postpartum depression because of the hormonal shift. So we know in very big hormonal shifts that happen in a lot of women's lives, women who have uteruses, that there is there's a link. For some reason, that just got lost in the discussion about perimenopause and menopause. That is such an obvious progression. Of course, we're going to have emotional changes because our brain is changing. And that's why we're here talking about this. So the fact of it is, hormonal changes that happen with our progesterone, our estrogen, our testosterone make a very big difference and impact on our brain health and our mental wellness. And they're different. So perimenopause, which is often called the zone of chaos, is when we are having these very unpredictable ups and downs, and they're big spikes of things, and not having a whole lot of. So when we have our periods, we have we have the cycle, but it's traditionally, not for everybody, obviously, has a more predictable way to it. But in perimenopause, it is absolutely erratic, and that is a very scary time for a woman's mental health. And we don't know this and we don't talk about it. We're not prepared for it. As you said, I'm really passionate about this because, and as a therapist, we don't have a lot of training in the perimenopause and menopause world, if any at all. In fact, most people have had zero, even a conversation about it. I was just speaking at Yale a couple of weeks ago to mental health therapists, and I had a therapist raise her hand and say, "I've never heard the word perimenopause." And I was like, "Oh, I know in your education." She's like, "No, in general. I've never heard of it. I didn't know it existed." And that's absolutely insanity to me in it, especially when, and to no fault of her own, by the way. So I like to explain the differences of what's happening in our brain with understanding what the hormones that we have that become erratic in perimenopause and in menopause, what they're doing when they're working right, when we have the levels that we want them to be, as a way to springboard is explaining then why we're having these differences. And instead of just lumping it into like hormonal changes or something big like mood swings, we actually understand, oh, this is specific. This is specific because we have a hormonal change. So, and this is something that I wasn't taught when I was becoming a therapist, that I didn't have any doctor talking to me about this. I had to do the research myself. I had to learn these things. And unfortunately, that still needs to happen. So here they are. So estrogen. And estrogen, as we know, is just such an important part of all parts of our bodies. And our estrogen receptors are really, really important. And the estrogen is working in multiple systems at once. So you'll hear like in how it shows up, you'll hear it's here and it's also here. And so it's not just the first symptom, it's also the interaction of the symptoms that compounds and that makes it, really kind of difficult for us. So with estrogen, the number one thing that it's doing for us is it's helping us with mood regulation. So when we're talking about mood swings, I don't love the word swing. Actually, I just find that to be a demeaning word. But the regulation that we have. So when estrogen is at the level that we need it to be for our personal body, we are optimizing our ability to regulate ourselves, and that means when things are going okay, we can regulate ourselves, like the kind of the normal way of life. It also means when we are stressed or trauma or we are sad or we have any kind of emotion that is triggered, that we have a natural estrogen is naturally helping us to regulate, which is really important because when it's missing, we now don't have the same ability to regulate what we normally would be okay. So when you hear a woman in perimenopause and menopause saying, you know, this didn't make me mad before, or, you know, it's so much harder for me to get myself, like the sadness feels more sad, or I've never experienced anxiousness before. That's what we're talking about. There's a shift in your estrogen levels that is actually starting that and being a trigger point to that. Another thing that estrogen is doing is that it is helping with emotional resiliency. So we have emotional regulation, and then we have emotional resiliency. So emotional resiliency is different than regulation in that it's like, well, yeah, I can kind of bounce back. I can bounce back from this. And that is a word that has been left out of the conversation about hormonal replacement therapy and about what's happening during this time period that is critical, that I see in my practice and I see women talking about, which is it just is lasting longer. Or so not only do I not recognize the emotions that this normally wouldn't make me feel this way, the regulation part of it, but the things that normally would make you sad, or it makes sense, like it's really hard when your kid isn't doing well, or you're having problems with your spouse. I can't get myself back to where it was. The tools that I used to have for emotional regulation are not working anymore. And it's not falling under just a mood swing. It is your inability to use what would have worked before. And that's, to me, I think when I tell women about that, there's usually like a pretty big relief, like, okay, so that's why this feels different. There's actually a hormone that was helping me with my resiliency that I don't have anymore, because it feels like you have to do so much more work in order to get back to like a homeostasis of emotional well-being. So that's estrogen. Then we'll move to progesterone. And a lot of times in the conversations about progesterone, it's either about protecting the uterus or it's about sleep. And those two things are like really important. And as I said, like there's a compounding effect. Like if you're not sleeping well, or if you're fatigued, it makes that in and of itself makes a mental health issue. It also is progesterone is helping you with getting like your calming effect. It has a calming effect to it, which helps you to get to sleep as well. And for a lot of people to stay asleep, but also your progesterone level when it's doing well before perimenopause, and the menopause, and then in the semi-regulated parts during perimenopause, is you just have a different experience of yourself. And so when I hear women talking about they just don't feel like themselves anymore, which is a statement I hear a lot, I think estrogen, like mood regulation, but I also think progesterone, and I think just that calming effect that isn't there anymore, or isn't the same level. You don't have the same access to it. I hear, like there's a lot of jokes about PMS and then in menopause about rage, about women's rage, like stay away from the menopausal woman, and there is an absolute increase in irritability and in anger that's happening for a lot of women. And it's often tied to progesterone levels too, not exclusively, but there is absolutely a difference of the calming effect of progesterone does make a difference in the rise of irritability and anger as well. Yeah. Do you have any questions?
Oh yeah, just a couple of things that popped up were one, and maybe we'll get into this, but there is first of all, thank you for saying the bounce back. I don't think I've ever heard that, or just the being able to feel like you're in something for so long and not being able to get yourself back out of it. I've definitely can see myself in that in multiple different situations. So that kind of makes sense now. And I guess my natural question that popped up immediately is that if you're on, I'm like on the lowest dose of my own personal patch, and this is not a pro HRT or I mean, everyone's going to do what they want. Everyone make your own decisions, please. Um, so I can only speak from my experience. So if I'm on this low patch, so I guess the question is, it's still not going to be what it was, right? When we had our full burst of estrogen before perimenopause, menopause, and especially menopause hits, because then that just kind of goes. So I guess that was my first question that popped up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And and caveat to almost everything I'm going to say from now on is going to be, there's not enough research. There's not enough research. We do not know. So some of what I'm saying, I am deducting. Some of it is from like, this study makes sense to this, but we don't have studies that are directly related to looking at emotional resiliency in perimenopause and menopause to my knowledge. And I have searched a lot to find something specific like that and to find treatments that would help change that. But what you're saying is accurate, that in we'll fast forward to menopause. Menopause, it is, you're not going to get to the levels that you are at the optimal time, that you have the optimal amount of natural progesterone and estrogen in your body. And it's a different kind, also, that your body's experiencing it differently. You're also, and I use this, I don't know how others would say, how others will react to this statement, but I'm starting to feel like it's very truthful to me, which is, I see perimenopause and menopause as a trauma to our bodies and a traumatic experience, even if for some reason you have low symptoms on it, because it's this huge overhaul. And one of the reasons why I like using that word is that we understand when someone's experienced trauma, there's a before and an after. And we know that in the after, that you can grow resiliency, you can heal, you can have a healing journey. Because if you're not, and I'm not sure if anyone ever heals, but you figure out how to piece things back together again. But it's never the same. And that's how I look at the perimenopause and menopause experience. And I particularly think that with the experience in mental health in perimenopause and menopause. So yes, you are not back to where you were. If it's happened suddenly, or you're one of the ones that absolutely mental health is affected, then what I think is there can be a gradual change, that it doesn't feel as dramatic. And so even if we were to do the levels, or if there was a study that was showing your mental health here with these kind of hormone levels and versus that, which I know we don't have, then I'm not sure we'd see a huge difference, even though the numbers would be different if it was a gradual experience. But I'm guessing with that answer. I do know when it's hysterectomy, when it's something pretty substantial, like there's a very quick amount of time that it's happened, that there is a big difference of the before and after.
And I know I sort of popped in a question. So you had the estrogen, you talked about progesterone. Was there another thing you wanted to mention?
Yep. So testosterone.
Okay.
Yep. And I'm so grateful that testosterone is getting a lot more attention than it had even a couple of years ago, because it's actually a really crucial aspect. And I'm also in the sexual wellness space as well. And testosterone is really important for where we are in that space, but it cannot be underestimated of the importance that it has for us in our mental wellness too. So testosterone, when it's at the levels that we need it to be, is really helping reduce sleep reduction, which again, so it's hard for some people. Sleep doesn't seem to fall under mental health, but it really does, because you want to be well rested and not only fall asleep easily, but stay asleep, so that your body does its rejuvenation during sleep, which is highly correlated with lessening of depression and lessening of anxiety. It also just adds this kind of beautiful brain protection, and it allows us to have like a circadian rhythm that we need to have, that our mental wellness relies on. Our mental health loves consistency. Our mental health loves prediction, like being able to predict. And in perimenopause, there's nothing that's predictable during that time period. So our mental health is very affected by that and the unpredictability of it. And then with menopause, it's the decline that we're speaking of. And some people will bring melatonin as a part of this as well. But it's the of the four, it's the least impactful on our overall mental wellness, but it's obviously very impactful on where we are with our sleep. And then, going back to our to testosterone, it is like when I work with women on desire and like our libido, I'll talk about vitality and our spark and vibrancy. And testosterone is highly related to us feeling like our vitality is there, and that we have a connection with the spark inside of us. It's also heavily related to fatigue, or not being fatigued, like having a higher energy level, and that's really important too. And then there are some studies that show that there is a link with all of that with testosterone and confidence. So if you're sleeping well, you're feeling good, and you're feeling vital, that's often linked with feeling good about yourself. I'm not sure that I don't think we have good enough studies to really link it, but I think there's definitely a correlation. So I'm not sure there's a cause and effect, but I do think that there is a correlation that's really important with testosterone levels and how you're feeling in your body.
Oh my God, it's also fascinating. And I do have testosterone that I haven't started yet. So I think I will start. It's the one thing I haven't done yet. Two quick things I wanted to mention before I kind of want to throw a theory by you is that I know from personal experience going through perimenopause was very crazy. And I had gone off the pill. I'd been on the pill since 45 or 46 because I have horrible endometriosis. So my doctor said, stay on it to like keep that at bay. She's like, oh, you can go off of it now. I did. I white knuckled for about 9 months. My listeners have heard this. I was suicidal. I couldn't get out of bed. I was breaking out. I was crazy. My kids were still young. I was in the in the process of shutting down my business. So all these things were happening at once. I almost blew up my marriage. I mean, I look back, but nobody except for one naturopath that I had talked to was saying really once you get like you hit menopause that you will start smoothing out and it's going to be a whole hang on.
Yeah.
There's going to be like some calmness on the other side. And so then now being fully, I'm 55, I've been on my hormones and this and that. There's a different steadiness, but there are some of the other things, of course, that you're talking about. As I want to throw the testosterone. And so I know everybody has their own journey. And this is leading to my next question is that I feel like after talking with so many women and just out and about and having this podcast that there's something also about midlife. And I'm just curious because I know you talk to so many women and they're your patients and you're out and about. Like, is there also this thing that happens kind of at the same time where we've gotten to this place of we're shedding kind of who we were and a very different set of drivers. And we're looking, I mean, I can say by personal experience and people I've talked to that we're kind of looking now to do different things. And it can be the time where we are focusing on ourselves because maybe kids are older or they're getting out the door. But I know, having said all that, there is like all the shit that happens in midlife. I mean, literally. And that was last week's podcast. We have kids, we have aging parents, we have like divorce, we have all this stuff. But I feel like too, if we haven't done our work and I've been in therapy for a long time. Thank God for people like you. Is this a time where our demons, so to speak, kind of tend to pop up if we haven't sort of met, if we've just pushed things aside? Is this the time where you're seeing a lot of women are face to face with some real hard truths?
Yeah, and I appreciate you naming it and bring it to the forefront because I think it's a complicated brew what's happening in this time frame. I think that every phase of life has its issues, and if you had asked me like when I had newborns, I would have been like, oh, nothing's like this. I remember thinking like when now that I have a 26-year-old and I hear like people with toddlers thinking it's the worst phase, I was like, you have no idea. It's bigger kids, bigger problems. And I wish that I had the problems with a toddler, that kind of thing. There's a part of me that thinks there's some of that's happening, that I do think that this phase of life has, for a lot of women, unique characteristics that are a hard and heavy load. And I think that in a lot of ways we aren't expecting it, that there is this kind of PR out there that, once you hit your 50s, it's like everything's going to be great and you get to come to your own. And that's not, for a lot of women, what ends up happening in the details of what their life is. And so like the disappointment of that, of thinking like, if you had like, I have a 26-year-old, I also have an 11-year-old. So I'm not an empty nester in that way. And I, and so is it the life load that like, oh, I don't have the empty nest. I don't get to kind of be free and have, my decisions for my own. Or is it, this is just harder for me because my hormones are not correct and they're dysregulated, and I don't remember shit the same I did. I don't have the resiliency back to what I used to. Things feel harder. Or is it that all of these things are really popping up? I think it's both. And I also think, like, to your point of like, if you don't do your work, is it going to show up now? I think that that can happen for women too. I think this is the time, and it's the best time to do a clearing of a lot of things in your life, and in some ways we're hormonally set up for that. Like, um there are some, hopefully there'll be studies that actually prove this and that we have more of it. But thinking of the change of our hormones, that we have a releasing from like the nurturing part of us and more into like, you know not gonna worry about you anymore. There's this wonderful woman on TikTok right now that started this I Don't Care club. It's so funny. I don't know if you've seen her. She's hysterical. And all these women are just flooding to her, talking about all the things they don't care about anymore. And like, we can't care about having a bra off. Don't care if we're in leggings all day. Like, there's that part. That part is really hormonally triggered, the change of that. But also we're sick of it. Our gender has been in charge of so much, and have taken care of so many people, and we have, and especially our age group. I'm 53. We were taught to put ourselves last. We saw, for a lot of us, if it wasn't our own mother, it was our friend's mother, so like suffering from that. We are the generation that's second to you can have it all. We weren't the first generation to get that, but we're the ones who are like, no, you can't. No, you can't. It's a price to pay if you do kids and marriage and career and all those kinds of things. And I think at this point, I think 50 is also like, they used to say it was the midlife crisis, 40 to 50. I also think it's the awakening. And I think part of the awakening is, have you dealt with the trauma that you've experienced? Have you dealt with the sadness of the things that have happened in your life? And I think it's that 50, where we are is that we look back and we're looking forward. And we all know that there's less forward than there is back when we're at this time frame. And I think that is it. Our mortality is inescapable in trauma, saying, you don't have a lot of years left. You're going to deal with me now. And then I think we have a hormonal shifting that's happening that is like, oh, I'm going to make it. Yes, you are going to have to deal with this right now because your tools aren't working. I don't think that dealing with your trauma or dealing with all of your trauma is the buffer before you hit perimenopause and menopause to any of those things. But I do think it is absolutely a factor if you haven't. And I do think it will make a difference to your benefit if you're dealing with it before you go into the hormonal shifts of perimenopause and menopause. And if you haven't, I think it's going to raise its hand and say it's time. Like, it's time to be free of this. I was telling you earlier that I filmed myself before I was doing, before I had my hysterectomy. And there's this one scene in it. I knew I had crying videos because I was like, I cannot believe I'm the woman crying on a video right now. But there was a time that I filmed that actually ended up being the most profound moment for me watching it today. And I said, it was 3 weeks before my surgery. And I said, I'm so sick of taking care of people. I want to take care of anyone else right now. I don't want to. I want to have 3 weeks where I don't work. I don't take care of kids. I'm not looking out for anyone else's well-being. And I said, I just want to sit and think. I don't even remember saying that. But when I heard that, I was like, yes, same. And it was me saying it. And I was like, I want it now. I want that time right now. I want to not take care of somebody. And even I want to release myself from the self-imposed aspect of that, and the being guilt-free of all of that. And I think trauma or your life not turning out how you thought it was going to, which is for most people, there's parts of our lives that didn't turn out how we thought it would be. It's it's the perfect time to be dealing with that. And I prefer when people have agency in that instead of it being hit and there's no choice. But sometimes we can't control that.
Oh, and thank you for sharing that about your hysterectomy. And we're going to actually link Juliana's video because I know a lot of you listening are having different things that you're navigating. I actually have a very close friend who's about to get a hysterectomy next week, a full hysterectomy. So I know that will be very helpful. So thank you for sharing that. So what do we do? So first of all, we're talking about heavy things here, and it's Mental Health Awareness Month. And this whole podcast, it's like you're not too fucking old. And I've always maintained, like, I can't do this rah tell you it's all going to be wonderful. Well, I've never said it's all going to be wonderful, but I do believe that when we do the work and we just put ourselves first and we look at this time in life as an opportunity versus like I'm packing it in and it's all over for me, that, it's not easy. It's not easy to raise your hand and like walk through the flames, but it's really important. And neither of us want anyone to suffer. Like, y'all heard about my breakdown, and I got to that place, Juliana, where I was in a shambles and like had to opt out of my life to put myself back together. And I don't want anyone to be like that. So how do we identify if we are sort of in a situation? Because I think all of us, because of how we've been brought up to just trudge on and kind of suffer in silence, I'm venturing to guess a lot of us are probably experiencing symptoms or need some help, but we're just soldiering on and working and taking care of everybody and pushing through. So what are some things we can be looking for? Are there resources, that quizzes or anything that we could tap into? We think that, like, I've taken some quizzes that I'm just not feeling like myself, but I think something's going on. So what would be a natural next step?
That's the first sign, is when you think I'm not feeling like myself. And when we've been hearing that phrasing lately, a lot of us are putting it just in the context of physical, but it should be emotionally as well. Or if someone else says that to you and they're like, oh, something seems different, or I'm worried about you're reacting different, or you seem different. And that, so as soon as that happens, that's when I want you to, well, actually what I want you to do is I want you to get educated first. I want you to know what is out there, and what the signs are. And it's interesting because I've been doing this survey about the impact of perimenopause and menopause on mental health. And it's over 80% at this point. The stats will change as the numbers get higher, that didn't even know that was a symptom of perimenopause and menopause. And then when I ask, like, what are your symptoms of depression and anxiety, a lot of people don't know what anxiety and depression are, and even what the symptoms are. And for some of them, like, so let's talk about anxiety. It could be a menopause symptom, or it could be anxiety. So like heart palpitations, that happens with anxiety. That's a symptom of it. It's also a symptom of perimenopause and menopause. Or sweating, that's different. Your heart changing, your racing thoughts, or inability to sleep. Almost the full list of anxiety falls under menopause as well. And so it's learning that you could have symptoms that are falling into multiple categories. Don't overlook that it could be mental health. And same with depression, like the sleeping a lot, feeling despondent, feeling down, or your life doesn't feel the same, a muted part of it. A lot of times when we're talking about mental health, you are taught the extremes. So when you hear about depression, you're thinking about suicidal thoughts and ideations, which is a component of it, but it's not the only components of it. There are other parts to it that are important, like sleeping more. That is, if you're sleeping more than you typically do, or you don't have the same kind of joy, or you see yourself isolating more, those are parts of depression that you need to start being concerned about. What does this mean? And so educate yourself on depression and anxiety in particular, because those two are really significant changes. And we see, if you go into perimenopause and menopause with anxiety or depression history, we see that there's an increase for a lot of people of your symptoms, or additions into what your symptoms are of anxiety and depression. And also there are people who, for the first time ever, never had depression or anxiety before. When they hit this, they start having it. Um, Same with like suicidal thoughts. The statistic that first started, like rang the bell that there is a mental health issue came by accident. They were doing a study on like what are those time periods of when when genders kill themselves the most, have completed suicides, and they just so happened to the age came 45 to 54. And when that stat came out, some very smart people said, hold on a second, that is the same time period for the average of perimenopause and menopause. There's got to be something there, a link there. And there is. And in perimenopause, the current statistic is a woman is 7 times more likely to have suicidal thoughts than in perimenopause than at any other time in her life. Yeah. And I think about your story. I'm so grateful that you've shared that. I'm just, it's heartbreaking to hear it. I can't imagine how much you were suffering. And I would guess part of your story is no one knew, and no, meaning like no one knew where this was coming from. And because we have so much life stuff happening, we can point to it to make sense. Like, oh, well, this is happening because of this. And, I've got this happening, or, or whatever it is, and not realizing that there's a hormonal component to this. So education is really important. Understanding how serious this is. So we know, like as therapists, our business is how to help people change their behavior when they want to change it. We have countless studies that show when you scare people, they don't change their behavior. So giving the statistics on suicidal thoughts or completions is not meant to scare you. I know that's not going to make a difference, although it really should in this aspect. What I wanted to do is like, that's how serious this is. You're not making this up. You're not making this, and it's not something that you can control. It is like when I was pregnant and crying at a I don't know, toilet paper commercial, I couldn't help it. I could not help that made me crying. It was just more socially acceptable and maybe kind of cute. It's not so cute if I'm feeling depressed and I can't get off the couch and it's perimenopause and menopause and I have life stuff happening at the same time. I'm going to naturally not be inclined to think it's a mental health issue or hormonally based. I'm going to think it's a life load issue, and it's likely an interaction. Um, but you need to know that it is, that you need to be looking with professionals as to finding out which part of it is. I wish that everyone walked into perimenopause with a good therapist and a good support system that's tracking each other. So the second thing I would say is, and I talk about this a lot, I'm unpartnered, and so I don't have somebody on a day-to-day in my house besides my kiddos. And I'm not always sure they have the most accurate assessment of things. I mean, who does? I mean, they would probably say the same thing about me. But you want to have somebody in your life, and typically, and the service that I'm doing is showing that as friends, that we are tracking each other, and we need to be more active. So my suggestion is that you take the lead. For you're hearing this, you're listening to this podcast, be the person in your friend group that's saying, I'm feeling a change in my depression. Use the word depression. I had a panic attack. I haven't had a panic attack in so long, or I've never had one before, or I looked up this article. This is what it is, ladies. If anyone's having a panic attack, these are the symptoms of a panic attack. Be the information giver and be the person that's using those words. And then track each other. And if you're the one that says something feels off about you, not in a judgmental way, not in a pointing fingers, but just in like, I'm worried about you. And do you know this? Do you notice this yourself about yourself? So be the one that says that first in your group, and then look out for each other in that way. And I even recommend designating that. Not making that assumption that everyone's busy, and if all your friends are perimenopausal and menopausal, everyone in your friend group is going through some stuff too. So it's pretty amazing. We keep our friendships as a part of this as well. But just knowing that and having at least 1 or 2 people looking out for you is important. And sometimes that's a therapist. A lot of my clients I see for years and years, every single week, and I am the biggest tracker of how they're doing. And once if I have a client that's 35, once she's 35, I start talking and tracking how her mental health is at a different level and how her hormones are doing at a different level too. So find a therapist that is perimenopause and menopause educated. We already know that we need to be finding medical providers that have educated themselves beyond what they were given. You need to find therapists that are too. I as I said, like I'm in the sexual wellness space, and I always say, I was given one class in all of my years of education. I wasn't given one sentence on perimenopause and menopause, and that's just awful. And then I would say you want to grow your tolerance for ambiguity, which feels like a very odd tool to give out, but it's actually one of the most important aspects of just honestly being an adaptable human, is learning how to handle ambiguity. But one of the things that I hear underlying a lot of what happens during perimenopause and menopause is that it's one more thing that is out of our control. There's so much that we can't control as a woman, and that we're being told what to do from birth to now. And now it's our body doing it. Our body is out of control. We can't predict what our symptoms are going to be, and we can't control that within a certain, realm of things. And so if you can find a tolerance for not being able to control what's happening, but not losing your agency and your autonomy in that experience, then I think it really helps build the resiliency that we're losing in our hormonal formula. We can gain it in a toolbox. And the way that you do that is kind of complicated, but it is a whole lot of meditation. It is a lot of talk and mood regulation techniques. For some, it's cold plunging. It's really about finding what is going to be the thing for you that changes how you experience your emotions and how you experience the need for being able to predict and be in control. And I'm not advocating for being out of control. I'm not advocating for you have to feel zen all the time. But if you can find your way back to the okayness when you're not okay, then, and you build that as a muscle memory, then when you're not feeling okay, it's one of the things you can grab to, like, this feels terrible right now, but I know I've felt terrible before, and I can write myself back again. Tolerance for ambiguity and agency are really big factors in that.
Ooh, that was such great information. And thank you for sharing like how we can help our friends and really talk about these things. I found with everything, once we open up a channel, oh, me too. Oh, me too. Oh, it's, so, but there's so much shame involved, I think, still with talking about mental health. And one thing, and I could talk to you for hours, but one thing that popped up, and I just wanted to address this because I think this is commonplace, that we've been operating a certain way for a certain amount of years. And the people who are closest to us, maybe partners, spouses, family, expect us to be this certain way. And this is from personal experience too. So when I kind of broke down, it disrupted everything, because I'm the one, and I know everyone listening is going to relate to this. I'm the one who is the hard charging, the planner, the caregiver, taking care of everything. And it rattles people when that person goes down.
Yes. Well said.
And it's not like you're not going to go down a couple different times. And I was just experiencing this again and again. I had to have a real honest conversation with my husband and said, I felt like I can't not be okay. And that's not okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm. It's so powerful. And unusual to have those words, and being able to like know that and to be able to state that, it's so healthy. It's really, really powerful.
And I think the only way, to be honest, Juliana, is because I've done so much work and because I'm in this world and talk to beautiful experts like you, that I have tools. When I was breaking down 10 years ago, there were zero tools. And I'm not going to even say I was a nightmare. I have compassion for that person because I was just not okay.
Well, you were struggling trying to figure out what to do and who you were. And it's such a scary experience when you don't recognize yourself. And especially when you didn't know this was coming, and know what to do about this. It's just heartbreaking. And I have story after story after story like this. And it's interesting because people are afraid of sex. I mean, talking about it and mental health. And I'm like, well, I'm coming for you. I'm going to talk about it because it has to be talked about. And yet I understand it personally too. Like it is, I worry when I talk about this publicly that this is going to be used against women, and that the mental health change that we know is scientifically happening to our moods, to our emotions, that it's going to be like, aha, that's right. Don't want to hire you because look at the nightmare that you're going to be when you hit perimenopause and menopause. Or marriages, it's your fault that all these divorces are happening. We knew it, that 51% was your fault. All of that, because so much can be used to weaponize against women. And I think, yep, that's the cultural problem, not an emotional wellness problem. The emotional wellness problem has got to be addressed, and we've got to fix the way that the culture is talking about it. And frankly, it has to start with women. And unfortunately, we are always the ones that are having to start these kinds of things. But we have to do this for ourselves and for each other. And when I was, when the studies came out, we were learning about the suicidal thoughts, and I kept thinking, it's horrific. I have sat with so many people that are in those places, and sat with the family members of those who have completed suicides, and I know the absolute devastation that is lateral and generations that happen from that. I also kept thinking about all the women that were below that level of severity, and how many women are pushing through, because I mean, how many times we have cramps, we push through them. With your endometriosis, I can't imagine what you had to push through physically with that. We are taught how to push through our physiology and our emotions, and so we have this muscle memory to it until we can't anymore. And it's when we can't anymore, which is what you're talking about, like, well, everyone expects us to, including ourselves. We expect ourselves to be able to do that. And when we can't, or when we won't, then the world has to adjust to us, whether it's a very small world in our family or the larger world. And as we collectively say this, I dream of the time where it's exciting to be hitting perimenopause and menopause, because we have the tools, we have the research, we know exactly what's going to help us, and we don't know which door of symptoms we're going to be walking through, but we know we're going to be held and cared for and respected, and we're not there yet. And that, I think, that adds to the scariness of this. And that is an overarching part of the mental health of perimenopause and menopause too. So it's the hormonal aspect, but it's also the cultural thing that's affecting our mental health.
Oh God, there's so many. We'd have a whole other podcast episode just talking about fighting for ourselves. And because there's so many women I know who are trying to do things within the corporate world for menopause awareness and to bring in resources. And that's the exact thing. We don't want to have it used against us, but we're going to keep fighting the good fight. You've given us so much great, you've given us so much great information. And so y'all, when we started talking, like, we just kind of agreed, like, we just wanted, as a result of this, not for it to be scary, but to hear from an expert. So if you are dealing with things, that you go talk to a provider, you do your research, and then it's your permission slip to, it's okay to not be okay, and get help. And you're not alone. You're 100% not alone. And so please take care of yourselves. And also, it's like you're saying, it's the both and. So it's this, and it's also this really great time to put yourself first. And there's all these wonderful things that are available to us, and we're living longer, and we want to have that quality of life. We don't want to just live long. We want to have a really good quality of life. So I have one final question for you, and that is, what do you think the best thing is about being in midlife, Juliana?
Mm. I love the comfortableness that I have in my own skin. And it feels so different to be right with who I am, and to be able to, like, be in the complexity of, like, this is not a good side of me, and I'll work on that, instead of, like, torturing myself over that. And being able to celebrate the good parts of me instead of diminishing that because it feels braggy. I love being able, I feel like the pendulum has swung to a place that has equilibrium, and that's been hard fought to get to.
I love that. Well, every guest on the show sends off our listeners with our rallying cry, which is, you're not too fucking old. So, Juliana, you're not too fucking old too.
You're not too fucking old. Yeah, it's not too fucking old for so many things. It's great. I love that.
I love it. Is there one particular thing you want to send people off with? Because this is going to be your rallying cry. So you're going to tell everybody, you're not too fucking old too. Fill in the blank.
I'm not, oh, I get it.
Yeah,
Oh,
you fill in the blank.
okay. You're not too fucking old to find absolute joy and pleasure in life again.
Woo, I love that. And I wholeheartedly agree. So, what do you have coming up? How can we support you? Where can we avail ourselves of everything that you've got going on?
Yes. So on all the platforms is Dr. Juliana Houser. And my website is dr-juliana.com. And I would love for anyone who knows somebody who is a woman 35 and older, or is herself, to go on my website and fill out the survey. I'm trying to get 1,000 women. And it's, to me, it's not just that we need this information. It's also, we need to show those who invest in research and invest in research for women that women care about this and that we have a lot to say. And so you don't have to have an obvious mental health symptom in order to fill it out. This is just, we're just getting a general feel for it. And this is going to be used to promote other research that's going to get us like the screenings that we need to be having, and the research treatments that are effective for us in that way. So I would love it. I love responding to people who are asking questions on social media. And then I do different things on my newsletter.
Oh, I love it. So we're going to link all that in the show notes. I will take that survey, and we are going to all take that survey because I mean, yes, we need more money. We need more research. We need more people to care about women's health, full stop. That's a whole other march on Washington. So let's do what we can do, and let's all take this survey. Thank you for spending this beautiful time with us today, because this is going to change women's lives. And thank you for doing all that you're doing in the world. And I feel it. And that's why I knew I needed to have you on the show and to share you with everyone in my beautiful community. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you for not being afraid of this topic. And thank you for the work that you're doing. It's so important. And I want to say, I actually just had a doctor's appointment this morning, just checking in with me now. I'm 8 months after my surgery, and it was so wonderful. And we met last month too. And she's like, "How are you?" And I typically have said, like, hard kind of symptoms. And I was able to say, "I feel better than I have felt in years now." And it was a fear that I had that I wasn't going to have that. And I just want to say it does get better. And sometimes the fixes for whatever it is that your symptoms aren't quick, but don't give up, and don't let your friends, your wives, your mothers, don't let them give up either. The help and the good is on the way.
Oh, I love that. That's beautiful. Joy. I love it. Thank you so much. I don't want to let you go, but I guess I have to. I'll have to bring you back. We'll talk about sex the next time.
Love it. I would love to do it. Yes.